Happy Tuesday, Whiskey Club members. Welcome to the May edition of Eureka Whiskey Club. I'm really excited about this month's pick. We're going to try our best to, have some fun tonight and drink some whiskey. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and, I'm not going to get too much into it, but I feel inclined to use my platform, as small as it may be, just to, just say that I'm not going to get too political, but obviously the events of today were pretty devastating, and I just urge everyone to register to vote and get out there and make change in the world, because after what happened today, I know we need to see some change. And like I said, I hate to start this call off on a somber note, because we do have a lot of exciting whiskey things to talk about. But again, I felt powerful about just saying something about the events of today, and just something needs to happen. We need to make some type of change in this country, and I'll leave it at that, and we'll move on. So thank you as always for being a member. We're excited to feature Rare Character tonight, and welcome Pablo Moy and Andy Shapira from Rare Character. We're going to be tasting some whiskey and talk about this super exciting emerging a brand in the whiskey world that's gaining a lot of steam and creating a lot of hype and a lot of noise. And we're extremely happy and honored to partner with them for this month. So we hope you have enjoyed your picks and have your cards ready in your boxes, and you like the hats that were in the boxes. I was rocking mine the other day at the park. I'll allow Andy and Pablo to introduce themselves. Andy, you want to go first?
Pablo, why don't you go first? Why don't you lead us off? I'll start then. But first of all, thank you everyone for letting us be your pick of the month. It's been a partnership that just started for me, really, and that's why I asked Pablo maybe to start off. But I just joined Rare Character and Pablo's incredible efforts in the last couple of weeks, and I'm 3-generation family in this industry. I've been working for Heaven Hill for the last about 15 years, family business, and my father is a CEO, and I worked somewhere else on Wall Street before that, and I joined the family business. My grandfather and his 4 brothers started the business, and I've always been amazed of how relationships and how bourbon's brought people together, like in a community. And I've actually had some health challenges that right when Pablo was starting Rare Character, and we've been good friends for a long time. I told my father I wanted to follow that passion of just doing American whiskey, of really the preservation and the history, but kind of pushing it forward too, modernizing it with kind of an eye to the past. And so a couple of weeks ago, it's been about a year in the planning, but a couple of weeks ago, I did join. I left the family business, still big fan and owner, but I'm 100% doing this with Pablo, and it's just been an incredible ride. And once again, it's the response from everyone's been humbling.
That's super exciting. I didn't know that. That's an amazing. Congratulations to Pablo, I guess, for adding such an amazing person to his team. Not that Pablo isn't amazing enough himself.
And then I could not be candid, Trevor, that when knowing Pablo for as long as I have, and that passion I share, he shares that passion, and I'm kind of at a stage in my life where you really want to do something that you just truly love, and you don't have time for the other things that you and your family, and that's really, it was too good of an opportunity. So I have to thank him every day.
Cool. All right, Pablo, your turn.
All right. Hello, everyone. No, well, first of all, for starters, I want to apologize for being in a car. Due to time zones, I got my Eureka bottle. I was going to be joining you. I went for a drink, but I miscalculated the time zone, and now I'm in a car in a parking lot of CVS doing this happily, but without a drink and sadly drinking coffee and not bourbon. So Rare Character, was born of an idea that I've been kind of tossing around my brain forever. Never considered ever doing it because, I was a restaurateur by profession. And then the pandemic kind of gave me a push to do this, Rare Character being a term that appeared in the back of a lot of old bottles, because I'm into vintage spirits. And it would say, known for its unique and rare character and rare character. And I was like, oh, rare character. So the idea is that within this project is being that Rare Character is a parent company of the many offerings we'll do, is that we'll always offer things of kind of cool and unique Rare Character, things that are special, things that are less common. We're kind of moving away from, like the same, right? The sameness, because, and Andy, him and his family has been doing, Evan Hill for 85 years. They're really driving, like a lot of big companies, to provide, things that people are accustomed to, like the taste, right? I love Elijah Craig. I love Elijah Craig. But, it has a taste. It has to be consistent. And Rare Character is very inconsistent. And that's, I think, makes it really special. We're just like, whatever we can cook up. Well, my motto is, if I can dream it, I can afford it, I'm putting in a bottle, I'm giving it to you guys. So that's Rare Character in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, Pablo, I'm sorry you're not going to be drinking with us tonight, but you were kind enough to offer up a couple really cool bottles for some prizes this evening that were going to be sponsored and given away by Rare Character. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about these bottles that, obviously the Eureka bottle is extremely special, but, you had the pleasure of entering some bottles into the Ascot Awards, which I believe one of the main, I don't know if he's a judge or one of the main people in that is Fred Minnick. And you guys won some awards there. So the first bottle that will be given away for our second place winner tonight is going to be a bourbon that was selected by Republique, which is an amazing restaurant here in Los Angeles. And that won platinum at the Ascot Awards recently. And then first place will be a bottle of rye, which was selected by the Everson Royce Bar, which is another great bar here in Los Angeles. And that one double platinum. So you want to maybe tease our members about those cool bottles and maybe encourage or inspire them to ask some great questions for our Q&A tonight, because I really got some great bottles to give away.
Totally, yeah. So I'll start with the Republic first. So that's a almost 6-year-old bourbon. The mash bill is 75-21-4. That's a really unique bottle, adds the Rare Character. So that was distilled at what's now known as Ross and Squibb, formerly known as MGP in Indiana. It was immediately moved over to Castle and Key. At the time, it would still have been Old Taylor, because Will and Wes, were, really just, taking control of the property and trying to remove all the overgrownness that was on there. They took a warehouse client, the very first one. So that bourbon was fully aged there. What's interesting about it is that particular whiskey, even at the age it is there, where now I have a couple at 6 years old, which actually Eureka will get probably 6.5 years old. Those are the oldest whiskeys to come off that property since the 1990s.
You're announcing things we haven't even announced yet, Pablo.
Oh, sorry. So, these are the oldest whiskeys to come off this property since UD basically abandoned it in the 90s. You would have had some wild turkeys that were aged in this warehouse that went into that first 17-year Master's Keep in 2014. That one, if you guys remember, if anyone has it, came in below 90 proof, has more to do with kind of airflow in the warehouse. It really advances the whiskey. There was a very rare set of bottles called Stone Castle that came out in the 2000s. Those were all Japanese exports. Those were actually all rumored to be all Wild Turkey stocks that Jimmy really hated, because he hated the way that a warehouse aged, but I really love the way that a warehouse ages. But it's more about it moves it off the flavor profile, which to the benefit of this whiskey, moves it away from what you expect to make it something really special and different, right? So that's the Republique, and obviously that's a great restaurant. If anyone's never been, it's a hard reservation. Sean's a total pro, and it was a very difficult selection process to find something. So that one platinum. The double platinum winner was a 5-year-old 95.5 rye, so 95% rye, 5% malted barley. That was also still in Indiana, aged there in their brick warehouses, then moved over to Stanford, Kentucky, where our aging facility is, and then further aged there and then bottled. That one's really special because for all of you who know 95.5 whiskeys, they're very like dill forward, a lot of spearmint. This is a tropical fruit bomb. It is like, like fruit flash, fruit pit, ripe fruit, like not so ripe fruit. It's so far from what you expect that made it special. I feel like all the judges involved in this process, when they tried it, were like, this is familiar, but so unfamiliar. And then, thankfully we won double platinum. So I'm excited for whoever gets these bottles to try them, because they think they're truly, truly, truly special. And then, obviously they thought so too. So. Oh wait, Trevor, you're muted.
Okay. Sorry, it's a bit warm today, so I have a fan on in the background, so I'm trying not to eliminate some background noise. But that's awesome, Pablo. Thank you again for sponsoring that and making those available for 2 lucky winners tonight. Just as a reminder, if you are asking a question and you're under a YouTube account where maybe your name is not your username, or you're under someone else's account, just make sure you put your name that is associated with your Whiskey Club membership in your question. That way we know who the question is from and verify that you're a member. And we want to make a great question. So we kind of gave a background on Rare Character, and Pablo, you kind of mentioned it a little bit as well. So you obviously, you and I met, just a few months ago, but, I had known about your can you hear me? Hello?
I can now. You were kind of frozen for me. I don't know about other people.
Okay. Sorry about that. Just kind of like how you got into whiskey and, where that passion started. And, it had this, our love for whiskey starts somewhere. So, Andy, I know you have a lot of rich history and your background in whiskey, but maybe each kind of tell us a story about where it all started for you.
Andy, you want to go first?
You go first. It's mine's a little more obvious. Yours is way more interesting, I think. Personally.
A little more obvious. Okay. So I'm a bartender by profession, then became restaurateur. I became extremely obsessed with distilled spirits. I wouldn't say necessarily just whiskey, but distilled spirits in general. I started asking myself, why are the cognacs and the scotches the things that people most regard as quality, and why is bourbon and rye completely kind of like underserviced or kind of ignored? You know what I mean? So I was identifying really quality whiskey and became kind of like obsessive compulsive, like psycho, like people who like chase down Beanie Babies. So I would literally get in my car and I would drive, and I would set random times. Like today I'm going to drive for 2 hours. So I drive for 2 hours, I get off the highway, and then just start hitting liquor stores and trying to find, old H&H, like which is the old distillery previous to being Buffalo Trace, or old, 80s Wild Turkey. And because I started to really identify bourbon's, quality, and I felt it was even some of the younger, even kind of simpler things would challenge and rival these things in these beautiful, ornate, and crazy boxes, right? That you'd buy when you buy like a crazy cognac or a psychotic scotch. And they were, quite frankly, pretty affordable, maybe too affordable. And I was like, well, I'm gonna take advantage of that. And then, at that time, I was like cracking and drinking them. And then my collection outgrew what I can consume in a lifetime. Like my children's couldn't drink as much bourbon as I owned. So I decided I'm going to build a business around it. So which became Old Lightning, which is a bar that specializes in rare booze. And that's where you can really like drink anything and everything. And, oddly or happily, bourbon, like the people who are here listening today and other people started to also at the same time as me recognize its quality and going, hey, like this shit's dope and it's pretty affordable and it like rivals some of the best spirits in the world. And then, that's basically, how I fell in love with the spirit. And, I am a huge advocate of it. I'm a huge advocate of its diversity because people always argue that Scotch has all this range, right? Which it does. And this has range and that has range. But if you kind of allow, yourself to really taste through whiskeys and you don't blend them and you really focus on single barrels like I am in this, you'll find a here and there a peated barrel. It's not peated, there's no, it just happened naturally in nature, or it became this or became that, or in the case of that rye, very fruity. So, then hence where Rare Character is born, and in particular the single barrel series, which everyone has part of the box, is to allow the spirit to be itself and to not be blended and lost, and to really show the range of this category because it does have so much range. Anyway, that's my bit on like how I fell in love with this category. So.
And I'll take a crack. I mean, unlike Pablo, I was born into it. I was committed from day one. But I grew up knowing that bourbon was really more of a community, that it really kind of brought people together. In Bardstown, where our distillery was located at the time, you really got a sense of great friendships. I always kind of like to say a little bit of a joke is Loudmaster distillers are related, and that's not just a Kentucky joke. But the whole community, there's the fan. It's if one distillery used to have an issue, parts or go out or whatever, the other one would come over. And really one of the signifying moments for me was in 1996 is when Heaven Hill had our fire, and I do say ours. It's still in my DNA, and I'm still an owner, and this is completely a separate entity. But our distillery burned down, lost 7 warehouses, about 150,000 barrels of bourbon. And the next day, pretty much every distillery was there to lend their help. And of course, it was a time when bourbon was as we like to say, almost going to a great liquor store in the sky, consigned to a great liquor store in the sky, and there was capacity. So we were able to make it through. But that's unusual to have your competitors actually come to you and help you out in those times. And so it was that kind of sense of growing up, knowing I would always kind of want to be in business, but I kind of saw how bourbon and business, you could also kind of help other people. And what Pablo and I are trying to do is kind of pulling that forward, where we're actually we have several different offerings that we're coming with. And I am a huge aficionado of the history and making sure that you do things the way it should be done. No shortcuts, because Paulo's right. This is a category that sometimes can't be very, very well defined, because it is well defined. there's so many laws and rules and regulations that say how it can be made. And master distillers are creatures of habits, and they master their trade. But the range is fascinating when you look at it on a smaller basis. And now it's the first time ever that you can kind of celebrate these whiskeys, because the prices, I mean, I know a lot of people complain about how prices are going higher and higher, but that has been an ability for people to explore in a different area. And we do want to make sure it stays accessible, because bourbon needs to be accessible and enjoyed, I like to say, while telling stories with people. That's like the second definition of it. But our whole idea, and what I really fell in love with, what Pablo started, and what my passion is, that we have the single barrel series, which is just a complete no barriers of exploration, and that we're making no compromise. Whatever we think is incredible, we want to share. We want to share with other people, and then we want to collaborate. We really want to bring a lot of collaboration in this industry, because it is very corporate now. I mean, it's dominated by a lot of international companies, and there's people that are incredibly talented, and they want to do things that their passion project that their company might not let us. And we believe with our connections, we can help bring some collaboration, which we do have some planned. We can't talk about, but that will be kind of in our distillers series. And also we want to bring back history, and that will be through vitalizing old brands. And our first brand is a brand called Fortuna, which was a brand that dominated the industry back in the 1880s. And the Fortuna was a very unusual name for that time, but the people who created it, a family still in Louisville called the Hollenbachs, were struck it rich with another brand, came out with Fortuna because they wanted to literally spread the great fortune that this industry provided their family, like spread the fortune, a taste of their good fortune. And that was just, Pablo saw that and just love the name and trademark, and it really is a definition of the whole company, I think.
And when is Fortuna coming out?
We hope later this summer.
60 days.
Don't hold us.
60 days, Andy. 60 days.
Sooner or later, it will be.
Waiting on the TTV or what?
It is, and it'll be a 6-year. And it will be a 6-year, 102 proof rye bourbon, and it will be consistent with its history. That's what it was. It's actually made by the Stetzel brothers distillery, who the Hollenbach family bought, and that's where Frederick Stetzel patented. You heard about Pablo talking about airflow. He was the one that patented the racking system that everybody still uses today, and that's really just without that airflow, that's maybe one of the most important parts of aging whiskey, as much as the wood, even. And so it was one of the brands, if not the brand, he used to master that.
So what they do before racks, they would just literally stack them on top of each other?
Stack them up on each other, and this also allowed stronger warehouses on the construction, because the racking system also helped support the structure. So it was that's why it's patented. But it's it just and also it provides not enough space where you can put the 3 racks. It's also efficient. So it's the first of a kind. Other people had already started to do some similar things, but he perfected it.
Cool. So obviously you guys, we've had many distillery on part of this program now, coming up on 2 years. Today is, I believe this month is 2 years since we've done this program. We've had, I think sourcing is definitely something that we talk about a lot more, and is more widely accepted now in the industry than it was, a few years back. You think of some brands that maybe got in some trouble for not being transparent with things, and now sourcing, and we've had many sourced distilleries on. I guess question for Pablo, being the barrel whisperer as he is, like what do you think are the most important factors when selecting barrels? Like, what are you looking for? I think when you and I spoke a few weeks ago, you told me some insane number of barrels that you had gone through on your most recent trip to Kentucky. Like, what do you look for? What stands out to you? What are you, obviously you have an amazing palate, but are you swayed by certain characteristics, or tell me what your process is as best you can?
Yeah, totally. So, we are what's considered to be a non-distilling producer, right? So we don't make anything. That is true. That is also at the same time untrue, because I'm also distilling stuff at different facilities in Kentucky, and they're being distilled to our mash bills and our specifications, with the hope of one day getting something off the ground. I don't know if it's going to be in Kentucky or not, but there's a lot of, I think, options of mindedness to where you can do things. Today, you're being staggered more in one place, Clyde down in Alabama and all these things. So I think there's a lot of opportunity around the country to do something. I think that for a while it was like Kentucky, but Kentucky has been there for a long time. I think there's like a lot of opportunities. So definitely don't not try a product because it's not made in Kentucky, because bourbon can be made anywhere in the United States. So yeah, we're not producing, but we are producing. Now that is a practice that was done by everyone from the origins of Old Forester to the origins, Andy's grandfather, they didn't have a distillery yet. They didn't have a brand when they started. So, everyone starts somewhere. So, this is our starting point. In particular, right now with the single barrel series, the single most important thing is trying to identify things that are unique or different or kind of off flavor profile. Those are things that most excite me. I have found a lot of really good whiskey. I think is very good, but very it's right down the line. It isn't necessarily like neither here nor there. I have grabbed some of that stuff. Some of the stuff I'm aging further, hoping the further aging will make it weirder or different or change it in some way. But the most important thing right now, currently with the single barrel series, is to offer variety. So my joke is, and for everybody who understands this, who've ever been to New York, so in New York, there's a lot of Greek diners. And the Greek diners is a place you can sit down and you can have Chinese food, like Israeli food, breakfast, all at one table. And that's kind of rare character, right? So I have 95.5 ryes from Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, all widely different, all the same mash bill. And you'll try them and go, why do these taste nothing alike? Like nothing even remotely alike. You would even think the same mash bill. Those are the kind of things that excite me. Those are the kind of barrels that attract my attention. Those are the things I seek out because what I want to do is kind of challenge the norm and kind of give people different looks. You know what I mean? Even on some stuff, it's like maybe like it's like in the case of certain things, you might go, oh, I know what to expect from this. It's a 5-year-old such and such. This is the mash bill. And you try, you're like, oh, this is different. Why is it so burnt? Why is it so low toned? Why isn't this sweet? You know what I mean? So well, in my case, as long as I challenge the norm, I feel like I'm doing my job. In a weird way, I almost want people to not necessarily love everything I have, because it's kind of like some people don't like the texture of tomatoes, right? You bite them, you pop in your mouth. Oh, I hate that texture. Some people hate avocados. You know what I mean? I love avocados and tomatoes, but some people don't like mushrooms or mayonnaise. And that's okay. Like I almost feel like if everything was like just down the middle, it'd be too predictable. You know what I mean? So the single barrel series is supposed to challenge you a little bit. Well, that's the goal, at least. And I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess like a lot of people are sourcing these days. Like, how do you? And obviously, Pablo, I know you have a lot of great relationships. Obviously, now bringing Andy on board, I'm sure that opens up some more doors for you. Like, how are you? I mean, is it just purely relationships where you're getting access to maybe stuff that other people that are sourcing don't have access to? Or is it honestly just come down to, everyone has access to the same things and you're just sourcing, what you find is the best?
So right now, sourcing is really challenging. And I'll say this to everyone because you'll notice things that you're accustomed to buying at a certain price will change, usually not for the better, be more expensive. most of the traditional sources are now no longer offering what's considered bulk or like selling barrels because they want to build their own businesses, their own brands. I've luckily been fortunate enough to build a lot of relationships. So when things pop up, they tend to call like the people they like, you know? And so that's been a benefit for me. It's luckily who like me. I don't know why, but they do, which is very nice. The second part is
You're a very
because
likable guy.
well, I don't know if I'm likable, but people do like me. I don't know why. And the other thing being is I get excited about 2 barrels, 1 barrel, 5 barrels, you know, whereas, you know, if you look at some brands and you see the front, it'll say, oh, our batch is this many bottles, like this many barrels in the blend being this many bottles, you know, you can figure it out. It's 30 barrels, 40 barrels, 50 barrels. So no one really wants the 2 barrel thing, the 3 barrel thing. And I'm all about the 3 barrel thing because sometimes, you know, you'll buy a single barrel rare character from me. And there's only 2 barrels of that one thing. It'll never happen again. You know what I mean? So when they get small lots, like the only person dumb enough to buy this is Pablo, and that's me. And I don't know if I call myself dumb. I think it's very smart. So, so I tend to get called about the little stuff because there is a lot of like little randoms around. But sourcing is becoming very challenging, and pricing is definitely going to change a lot. Things are getting more expensive. I'm trying to lower prices, to be honest with you. So, you know, as I'm producing new make, as I'm buying things that are younger, I'm aging them further, I'm able to lower prices versus, you know, raising prices because just like, and this is an example, just like, let's just say my favorite bourbon is Bourbon X, right? And that should retail for $50, but I see it on a shelf for 200. The same thing's happening in the barrel world where a barrel used to be $40 is now 200. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's knives out there. It's pretty rough on the barrel buying game. So it's been very challenging. And I can imagine for you having a big community, Trevor, you know, like getting enough barrels to service your community, I'm sure it's going to be harder too. You know what I mean? So.
And it's
Oh, I
been,
know.
I mean, I always like to say that you know, what Pablo hasn't mentioned it yet, but one of his biggest inspirations is really back during the glut of bourbon back in the 80s and 90s when the Coles Veins and Julian and they created all those incredible really store picks that are now the most celebrated bottlings in the entire history of bourbon. The Red Hooks, the Twisted Spokes, the Tawny Brothers, the Blue Smoke, Van Winkle, and those were all sourced. I mean, most of them. Some of Julian's were from Stetzel, and some of them were from actually Heaven Hills stock. But that was a different period. But Pablo it's now people are trying to build brands, and bourbon for the first time, really ever, is so cool. You know, it's like you know, you can build a quick brand and you can sell it. But people want big lots, and as Pablo said, he's always been like, I'll take 2, I'll take 3, and I'm the same way. We want to with our connections. Sometimes distilleries might not even bother to maybe call a broker or even think about selling it. They'll just blend it into something because it's just the easiest thing to do. We'll be there at the truck in 10 minutes, and we'll just buy it because it's worth it. And we're not looking to try to fit a certain profile for the single barrel series. So that's the fun part of it too. You can take chances. And that's like when we launch like a Fortuna. Now that we will celebrate the consistency and the history, and we'll do lots of fun things with the history. The package will look just like it did in the 1880s, the POS and the signage and everything. And we have a lot of great, cool stuff to do to make that exciting, but that's going to be the bourbon. That's going to be a bourbon. But then we know we have whiskey set aside for that. That's consistent. It's the same whiskey. But as Pablo said, it celebrates a lot of how some of the greatest bottlings ever. And Old Fitzgerald started as a source whiskey, got big enough, and a gentleman who owned it who lived in Milwaukee bought a distillery. And then the same thing with Pappy. I mean, he and Weller, they sourced. And even people like the Samuels family, they were kind of kicked out of T.W. Samuels. Their name was taken away from them. And what did they do? They listened and actually talked to people, Julian, they talked to my grandfather and people like that to figure out what should I do next. And that's how he got into the wheated whiskey. So we're kind of in a little bit of a stage too, where we want to learn, we want to hear, we want to see what works. And our dream is, one day to find a place to build something.
Sorry, my internet connection is not the greatest tonight, so I'm kind of cutting in and out here. But I missed the end of that, Andy. But
No, it's just we dream about building that distillery one day somewhere.
yeah,
And right now, we really are trying to listen and learn what we love, what we want to do, because once again, we're not building a brand really to sell. I like to say I'm trying to build another generational type of success, and Pablo's like I'm building something for my children and things. That he doesn't have children yet, but he's already thinking he wants to build that. But we're not in a hurry. And what I was trying to say, Trevor, is that a lot of the greatest brands, greatest successes, and we dream to follow in those footsteps is the kind of the take it slow and figure out what we want before we actually build. And it is a daunting exercise to build a distillery and then make sure you build the right one to think you're going to have really incredible whiskey. It's not easy.
well, it seems as if you have momentum on your side at this point. So plus,
right. But you have to have the right people too. You have to have the right people around you. And you have to have the right fan. You hope you're right. You can have people like Trevor, like you all, and this is all encouraging. But it's still you have to do it right, because that's one thing about bourbon is technically in some ways you can't ever screw up during the process.
Cool. Well,
can't add anything technically.
Yeah. I do want to get to these questions, and then we have obviously want to taste the whiskey. So, I have my tasting notes here on the card. Obviously, these are single barrel picks, so tasting is going to vary per bottle. When I was putting my tasting notes together, I was tasting off the 117.86 proof. It was I-21-15. So that's what I was tasting off of. But as always, in the chat, if you want to put your barrel, what you're tasting, and then throw out some tasting notes, that way other people can see, maybe they have the same barrel as you, or they have a different barrel. They can, compare and contrast. It's cool to see members meet up and kind of bring different barrels to meetups and things like that. So if you're doing that, always tag me, at Eat Drink Eureka on Instagram. If you're meeting up with members, we always like to see that. But these are my tasting notes. I also have some other bottles here, but I do want to get to your questions. So this is the tasting notes that this is the barrel, the 117.86 proof, 121.15 that I'm tasting. I like, as members know, I kind of like to have whimsical tasting notes sometimes. So like one of the things here, I smelled it and it smelled like leather. And then immediately, like when I think of leather, I think of my dad's wallet when I was a kid, just like him pulling out his wallet and just like you could smell it. Like, I don't know whether it was probably made with better leather than what wallets are made out of now, but like that leather smell just always reminds me of that. So I have that on there, and some peach, vanilla, clove. I did notice that this specific barrel, compared to a couple of the other bottles that I have as well now, that Pablo, thank you for getting me those other ones, that this one had on the palate, it did have a much sweeter flavor profile. I get, kind of like charred peaches, cinnamon rolls was a big thing for me with this one. Just the vanilla, cinnamon, and a bit of caramel, and then the finish to me, it's definitely long and lingering, and then kind of just Pablo put it in my head, and I get this with some other bourbons as well sometimes, but just kind of a bright spearmint on the end, which was really nice. So, Sarah Steepleton here had 121.14, vanilla, caramel, stone fruit, finishes smooth. See if anybody else in the chat. Thomas Riddle is tasting 121.11. Emmanuel's tasting the same. So Thomas and Emmanuel, if you want to compare tasting notes, it looks like you're tasting the same. Matt Vargo, 120, I-21-14. Hard for me to do tasting notes in the middle of having an imperial stout, but beautiful sweetness with a floral character. It's great. Yeah, I don't know if that's a approved tasting is to be drinking an imperial stout at the same time, but hey, it sounds amazing to me, and I would do the same. So whiskey and beer is always a great combination. But yeah, you feel free to chime in the chat if you have other tasting notes. But I just think this was a phenomenal whiskey. And, you know, as Pablo kind of teased, we do have some other barrels in the works as well for smaller releases. It won't be full. It won't be the full featured release for the month, but we will be releasing some small releases for, you know, members' first right to purchase. You know, just to kind of piggyback on what Andy was saying, you know, buying barrels is getting harder and harder. We've been buying barrels, Eureka, since around 2014. And I remember the days where I emailed a distiller and I said, hey, I want to buy, you know, I want to buy some barrels. And they're like, well, how many do you want? You'll buy as much as you can, you know, whatever you want, we can sell to you. And now that's definitely not the world we live in. So it's cool to see what Pablo and Andy are doing. And, you know, that's awesome to hear, Pablo, that you're, you know, buying 1-2 barrels at a time. So I do want to talk before we get into the questions here. So many questions about the label art, like all the cool label art that you guys do. Obviously, that's a super unique part of Rare Character, and kind of tell me about that. Who are your artists? Like, you know, everyone's asking, why do you have these llamas on the bottle? For me, you know, Pablo, you gave us a bunch of art to choose from, and I just thought the llamas were super cool. We're kind of a Eureka tease here, but we're also working on a new concept that hopefully is going to open up sometime next year. It's called Amalfi Llama. That's the name of the concept. You heard it here first. It's a bit of a higher end concept that we're going to be opening up a few locations for, you know, next year. But that's what we're talking about Amalfi Llama a lot in meetings. And I just saw these llamas and I was like, wow, those are super cool. So, but anyways, tell us about the label art, kind of the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, totally. So I'm glad everyone's loving the llamas or the alpacas. It's funny because the timing of it could be better, because Johnny Depp loves llamas and alpacas and everyone's obsessed with this court case. And you couldn't have a better timing on your bottle. It's perfect. It, like, when you were like, hey, we're gonna do it this month, I was like, yeah, sure. And then, like, obviously this case is going on. It's like, couldn't be better.
So are they llamas or alpacas on the labels? Are they alpacas?
I don't know what they are, but they look like that thing Johnny Depp's really into, which is awesome right now. Good time for the Kate Moss being brought into whatever. But so label art is literally up to the person who's purchasing the barrel. So, you know, my big thing is, here's your opportunity to communicate whatever it is you want to communicate, right? So it could be your logo. It could be, you know, like there's a store in Tennessee that the original store opened, like, you know, over 100 years ago, and they have an old photo of it, of their, you know, their great grandfather, you know, and that was back before you can buy bottles of liquor. You buy it by the barrel, and they would, like, fill the barrels up. So, like, they wanted to communicate that in their label. Like, certain places want to do, like, the interior of their stores or whatever. So our thing is, you know, I have a team that works for me, like a company that's basically like almost my company now. But because I got them real busy. But they basically work alongside, like, with Trevor, yourself, and then anyone else, to try to achieve, you know, what it is you want to communicate through the label. So I think that's super important. me personally, because you're trying to convey something. So it's the sense of connectivity to like this product, aside from being, something you think really good, right? But, then there's exterior connectivity as well. So it's literally, if you can dream it, we'll put it on there. What we try to avoid is intellectual property, right? So there won't be like a baseball team on there, or like the Hulk, or like Wolverine. Also try to get G. So, nothing too racy. But other than that, it's like, you can go wild. Like, you can do it. And like, literally, the next one, Trevor, you can get a photo of yourself. Like this image right now of me looking at you and doing tasting notes. That works too,
I don't think anybody wants that. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to dive into the questions here. Some great questions from our members, and we'll take these last 20 minutes or so to ask some questions. So Thomas Riddle asks, do you have a minimum aging year for your releases? And what's the longest aging that you guys plan on doing?
Great question. So we delivered our first whiskey in December of last year. So we were only in business for like 6 months. We are now getting into like pretty much like a 6-year minimum as our youngest whiskey-ish. And we're getting into that point now soon. We still have some other stuff. I try to pay too much attention to age statement, because depending on where things are aged, and that's why on the back of the bottles, I try to communicate like age here, distilled here, because age doesn't necessarily always translate. I mean, I've tasted 3-year-old whiskeys that taste like 6-year-old whiskeys, and vice versa. So I do have a lot of older stuff that's like right now 8 to 16 years old. That's going to live into a different labeling system or bottling system, which is not going to be through the single barrel series. Some of it will, some of it won't. And I'll go through, and my working title is called the Exceptional Cask Line. And it's more about, trying to spread it, right? Because right now, if you're a Eureka Club member, you got access to a bottle. If you weren't, and you don't get one of these really great bottles, right? And then if you're X store, if it's not a store in your community that bought one, and you're not getting a bottle, right? So I want to try to spread it out a little more. So I'm adding another line that'll be, different. They'll be on their own thing. They'll also have their own unique labeling system to themselves, but they wouldn't fall into the single barrel series. But we will be, hopefully, my goal is to improve, offering older whiskeys. I don't want to say better, because better is so subjective, right? It's personal taste, right? I've tasted some 10-year-old stuff I don't think is very good, and I think some 5-year-old stuff will beat it all day, right? So I just hope to really impress everyone. The more time this goes on, is to be able to be more impressed and more trusting of my stuff, to go, hey, if I see a rare character, anything, I'll buy it, because these guys are really, really trying to impress me. If that makes sense.
Cool. Yeah, we have a pretty sizable amount of malt whiskey, American malt, and it ranges from 6 to 16 years old. And we're actually probably some of it will take out some of the exceptional, as Paulo said, and that will all kind of connect across all of our different offerings, even like Fortuna and other revitalization, because we have other brands that we're going to revitalize too. And there'll be like the exceptional line within them all, which will be the kind of I don't know if I was the best to say, the most celebrating of the most unique kind of things that, as he said, wants to share with a broader audience. But it will be once again, but we don't know too, like for example, this malt, we're not just going to come out and sell all the 16-year-old as much as we can. We might come out with the blend. We might have a mini. I was joking the other day, kind of like a pop-up bar or pop-up restaurant, a pop-up label, a historic label that we just kind of rebirthed. That was an old malt, and it's the best blend of, let's say, the 100 best barrels that that we think we can. I mean, that those are the things. But once again, we have to build that trust that whatever we imagine, people are willing to pay their money for.
Yeah,
No, Pablo, but I mean,
you guys
you
kind
would
of
say
have
that
like you're bringing a sort of kind of like I don't know if this is going to make me sound lame or cool or maybe both, but it's almost like a punk rock attitude to the whiskey world.
Well, we really respect. I mean, I'm getting old, so being considered a punk, being punk is that's about as cool as I've ever been explained for a long time. But we do have that like real respect for the history, and that's why whatever we do, you'll know. We hope that everybody will understand. Oh yeah, this is their expression to be able to do this. This is their platform to do this. So, and some things, as Paul said, not everything is for everyone, but we're going to push the norms. I mean, we are going to push the norms, but we learn from what people have done in the past, and that's the history in this industry is unbelievable, and that's the difference between Scotch and cognac. I don't really feel like people tell the stories of people in those industries. It's very highbrow. It's like you're lucky to know a story or two. Here, all you do is like, did you hear that story about that? Oh my God! I mean, half of them probably aren't even true, but it's a storytelling industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think by the punk rock comment is more just like you're shaking the tree a little bit more, doing little things differently than versus not like punk rock, like disrespecting your elder.
I know.
All right, you want to get a few more questions in here. We may go a little bit over the hour, guys. So sorry, Pablo, you may have to sit in the CVS parking lot for a few more minutes. I apologize. Sam Steepleton asks, what is your favorite spirit after whiskey? Do you plan on making any other spirits in the future other than whiskey?
Great question. So my second favorite spirit other than whiskey is rum. Rum is everywhere, right? It has so much range, it's so much depth, and then now with all this what's called the pure rum movement, right? So the movement is pure rum. So you're seeing like no different than like Pastor Elijah Craig, right? Non-chill filtered, no additional coloring, just pure rum. That shit is dope. My plan is to kind of creep into other categories and other things. The biggest challenge right now, why I haven't offered them yet, is supply lines. It's real. Like sometimes when you have something you really like, you can't find it on a shelf. Most likely, you can't find the glass to put it in. It's hard to get stuff right now. So once things loosen up, I've already had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. I kind of bring things in. It'll be bottled differently, obviously, because I don't want to like confuse everyone. But I definitely want to like identify like great rums or great malts or great Armagnacs or whatever, and try to find a way to put this in, but without kind of confusing the end goal, which is for me and Andy to really celebrate American whiskey. Like that's our goal, is to let everyone else do, like their flavor profile and do their line extensions, and we'll just be like the outliers, you know what I mean? And just fuck with shit.
Cool. So Ted Schroeder asks, once you purchase a barrel, do you bottle immediately or do you do further aging?
I never ever bottle anything immediately. I'll identify a cask, even if I love it, I'll still let it sit with us for a little bit, to see if how it'll change, because whiskey is moody. So, and I learned this, it's moody. It's like really moody. So like, I'll try a cask today and I'll be like, the best I ever had. I'll try it tomorrow and it's like, why did I like it yesterday? And I'll try the next day and go, I love it again. It's really moody. So you got to kind of find a moment to get it out of cask when it's perfect. So as dumb as it sounds, even with a lot of the single barrel stuff, I always taste them and try to get them out on the best day they can so that they're the happiest. But whiskey is moody. It changes daily.
And it's just getting warm, Pablo, in Kentucky, so it's gonna. But I mean, Pablo, why don't you talk about the Wood series as an example?
Oh, okay. So I'll kind of chime in. Thanks for the question, Andy.
I'm sorry, I
so
wasn't supposed to ask a question.
No. You asked the question. Great question. So I'm adding 2 lines right now. One is what I'm calling finishing cask, right? That's used cooperage. Cognac, Armagnac, white port, tawny port, Jamaican rum, Barbados rum, something that was a previously used cask. The second thing I'm adding is what's called native woods. So that is specifically is native woods from around the world. So I'll call a cooper, well, if I can speak the language, in Brazil, for example, and I'll say, hey, I want you to, what's your menu of offerings of, that are sustainably harvested? And then they'll build casks to my specifications, so it could be any size. And then, to what I want to toasted or charred or whatever. And then they're referred to as native woods. So those will be woods from Brazil, Colombia, Spain, Africa, Eastern Europe, Japan. So I really want to feature woods from around the world. It started originally as just South American woods as a Latino, and as Andy likes to quote me, being the first Colombian in bourbon. But I want to feature woods because there are oaks from all over the world, and a lot have never seen bourbon, and everyone here will start seeing things like that popping up over the next 3 months. And I'm really particularly excited about that because depending on where you're from, your family's history, or cultural connectivity, I want to really just like this is America's spirit. And I'm American and I love my country, but we're made of a lot of different cultures. I want to try to feature as many as I can. So that's the Native Way series coming soon.
And none of these all these had to be approved by the government to bring in. Some were denied too, because they've never been aged. No spirit has ever been aged, which is frustrating. They didn't know or not know if it was going to be poisonous or not, so they just decided to go to government.
I join from my phone right now, Taylor. If you're watching, can you? Okay, sorry about that, guys. Sorry, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we're back.
Okay, sorry, man. My internet is giving me a lot of problems, so sorry about that. We're gonna finish it off on the phone here. So a couple more questions, and we'll pick a couple winners. Kind of a simple question. If Kevin Bird wants to know, kind of just given the history of Heaven Hill, I guess this is a question for Andy. He'd be interested in knowing if there's any desire to get into distilling, the distilling side, or if that experience helped you figure out what aspects.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, it is not. I was talking about it earlier. We absolutely want. Our dream is to build a distillery. We don't know where. We don't know what it would look like. We don't know who would run it, and we don't know how big we want it. We really want to try to do something that's different. We have ideas, and if we build a distillery, we hope it's as different and challenging, I guess, that you could call it punk rockish as possible. And but but once again, we're also I like to say my family's business is, it's an 85-year-old overnight success, if you want to call it that. I mean, you don't do these things quickly, and we need to build a foundation and know what we're going to do. And we have a lot of support. We have a lot of friends who are in the industry, and with know-how. So we plan on being a distiller one day if everything works out.
Okay, we're sorry, gentlemen. This is probably not the best thing. I can no longer see the questions that were asked prior here. So the joys of technology. My awesome marketing person here is texting me things. But if you see questions in the private chat that you guys want to answer, feel free. I'll ask one more, and then hopefully maybe you guys can select a couple. But so Robert Brow asks, I've seen rare character proofs from 80s to close, if not north of 120. Do you have a sweet spot you target based on any factors, rye versus bourbon, source notes, or does location during the selection have a big say in the final proof point?
I'll answer that question. So I've, over the years, bought a lot of barrels, and I've asked for things cast strength, and they say, well, we don't do that, we only do this. Or I'll say, I want this proof down. They go, well, we don't do that, we only do this. So I really leave it up to the person selecting it to let me know what they want to do. So if anyone who selects a barrel wants a natural cast strength, it'll be that. Now everything we do is non-chill filtered. We're the most minimal kind of intervention and stuff. It's literally just like a coffee filter that gets the bits out, and that's it. I mean, everything we do is non-chill filter, not everything, right? But if someone feels like, hey, I would love this at 107, we'll do it 107. We literally leave it up to the person who's picking the barrel to decide what they feel is best for the people who then will be consuming it, or they'll be presenting it to. And I just want to yes people and not no people, right? Because when for a tuna launches in 60 days, unfortunately, that will be one thing at one proof, it'll never change. But I really want the single barrel series. If you're there with me tasting it and you try, let's say, a 95.5 Kentucky rye, and you add a couple of drops of water, and you're like, wow, man, this is right now, what, 121? Can we get this thing at 115? That's what it feels like it is now. Sure. I mean, if you think that's what makes it perfect, then I'll do it. I'll do anything. Like I just want to say yes to everything. If that answers the question. Wait, Tyra, I think you're still on mute.
Oh. Yeah, sorry. I don't know why I'm so challenged today. So if you guys have a couple questions in the chat that you, in the private chat, if you want to take a look there, and if anything stands out, let me know. But I guess I'll ask one more question here. Pablo, this is Brian Piper asks, is there a certain barrel tasting or bottle hunt that's led to an unforgettable moment shared with your friends?
Well, Pablo, I kind of got that. It's actually kind of the way we met. It's the kind of way we met. When Pablo was kind of organizing Old Lightning that he was talking about, was one of the first times I met him. And I was actually with our tequila at the time, Heaven Hills, our tequila partner at the time, who are
Luna Azul,
Beckmans, and Jorge Beckman, and part of seventh generation Jose Cuervo. And we walked into the room, and our draws just dropped and seeing this collection. And I fell in love with a bottle of Waterfill and Fraser. It's a bottle famous for being a lady named Mary Dowling taking her stills down to Juarez, Mexico, making bourbon during Prohibition. But she hired a distiller named Joe Beam, who was our first master distiller. I mean, it says it's actually right here behind my shoulder. It says the Hancho Mexico bourbon, Joe Beam, and so for like many years, we were always going to trade. And that bourbon hunt for me, and it's kind of the whole first time I met Pablo, and then December of COVID, Pablo came in town to kind of really start talking to people about Rare Character. And I met him, nobody around. It was like downtown Louisville, middle COVID. And I traded him some Heaven Hill 6-year 90 proof for a Prohibition bourbon from Mexico. I felt like a kid in a like trading a baseball card. Like my mom would take me back to the kid's house and like, go give this back now. That's not fair. It's like a Mickey Mantle rookie card. But that's I'm sorry to that's.
It was signed by some lady. I think her name was Baby Ruth.
But it was a it's right here on my shoulder. You can right over here. You can see it. But it's that's how we met.
And I regret
cool
drinking those 6 years because now they can't find them anymore. They're rare as hell. Now they're like $200 a bottle. I drank them.
Well, bourbon's better drank than sitting on a shelf.
This is true. I don't like when people give me historic like sealed bottles, and it's hard to crack them.
A lot of pressure. We can choose favorite questions, gentlemen, if you want, or if there's another question we didn't ask that stood out to you. I know, Andy, it's probably easier for you to see the questions and Pablo and myself right now on our phones, but we can choose your favorite questions. It's up to you. I'll leave it up to you, gents.
Well, I personally did like the last question just because it was just it did bring up really our origin story about the barrel hunt, the barrel picks, and that was about 2015 or 14 or so, probably about around then.
Awesome.
I saw that question. I was going to say that was one of the cool ones, but there's a lot of great questions on here.
All right, so Andy, your selection is. Go ahead, Pablo.
No, I was going to say I also love that question because bourbon has been so special. You know what I mean? Like, Trevor, I mean, like, we're on here right now because you and I were breaking bourbon together, right? It's just like this really amazing thing. I have too many stories to share, and I also love that question as well. So I second that last question.
All right, well, we have to choose two winners. So since you both love that one, we will officially award Robert with the first prize winner. Do you have a second favorite of the night? At this point, again, I apologize for the technical or technology challenges here, but usually I'd recap all the questions. But did you have another question you enjoyed, and maybe my people in the background here can help me out and identify who asked the question?
I did, and I'll name the one. It was the one that asked about the variety of proofs. And I'm really grateful that someone noticed that because, we try to be as, like I said earlier, as accommodating as possible. and we try to I'll always lean towards cast strength. It's the way I like to. Well, it's not true. I like everything, but the fact that someone noticed that we have such a variety of proofs, and we're again like where the label's very obvious, right? They always change. To notice that I thought was really nice, and I want to say thank you to that person who noticed that. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I think that was very thoughtful and nice of them to be aware of it.
My our amazing digital marketing manager, who is again couldn't do these calls without her, always behind the scenes. Shout out to Taylor, who's in Lisbon, Portugal right now, doing this at 3 a.m. So thank you, Taylor. Robert
I think
Brow,
that question, by the way, was Robert. Yeah.
Robert Brow asked the question. So Robert, we have the second place bottle for you, and then Brian, we have that first place bottle for you. So we will be reaching out to both of you to get your information, and we'll get those amazing bottles out for you. Again, everyone, apologize for a bit more technical challenges tonight. I'm not sure what's going on with my internet, but so is the world we live in these days. Andy, a pleasure to meet you virtually, and hopefully one day meet in person soon and share some nice whiskey. And please keep me posted on anything and all Rare Character. And we're big fans, and we're just excited to bring this whiskey to our members this month. And more exciting things to come in the future with some more limited release picks that will be available to our members. But Pablo, get out of your car. Andy, I know it's late over there as well.
But I do want to say to everyone, thank you to everyone that got a bottle, and thank you to everyone that's a member of this community. Bourbon wouldn't be where it is if not for all of us consuming it, because we could be drinking other things, right? But I want to say thank you to everyone that has a bottle. And anyone that knows me knows that I would go to your house and shake the hand of every person and thank you personally. Very difficult where I am right now to do that, but I just want to say thank you, and hopefully everyone enjoys it. And reach out to me. I have an Instagram account. You can send me a DM. I'm easily accessible, or through our I don't run our Instagram, but you can get through me there or whatever. Or, I love talking to people. I love come if we missed a question, hit me up directly. I want to hear from you. I want to if you got an idea, I'll do it if something sounds cool. So I just want to say thank you to everyone.
And likewise, everything Pablo said, and I'm in Kentucky, so and Pablo's pretty much here all the time, and it's the city is never has a city felt like a true bourbon city like it is today. It's there's things going on here that are exciting.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a great evening, and again, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Trevor. Bye. Take care, everyone.